Is there a Tim Desideri? What item are you here for? What item are you here for on the agenda? I can't read your. So bike path? Okay. Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending this evening's Town of Amherst Traffic Safety Board. Today is August 6th, 2025. Our first order of business this evening is just an introduction of who we are. I am Eric Fraz, Chairman of the Traffic Safety Board, and we'll just introduce all of the players that we have up here in front of you today, starting with Cynthia.
Cynthia Selvin, Vice Chair.
Kara Biddlecombe, member.
Dan Ryder, member.
Kevin Cantwell, board member.
Nick Alterio, board member.
Charles Persons, Amherst Police Department.
Bill Prenovu from the Building Department. Scott Marshall, Planning Liaison.
Chris Schregel, Engineering Department, Traffic Safety Coordinator.
Mike Sukala, Amherst Town Board member, and I am a liaison to this committee.
All right.
Okay. So one other housekeeping issue, just so everybody is aware. If the alarms are to sound in the building for any emergency purpose, the exits are to my left, your right, and you can exit through the front or the rear of the building, and we just ask that you don't use the elevator if the alarm is sounding. With that, our first order of business this evening is to go over two sets of minutes for approval. The first one that we will discuss is the May minutes. They were not available at our last meeting. Open it up to the board for any comments, revisions, concerns in these minutes.
Okay, so
None being heard, is there a motion to approve?
Yeah, I'll move it.
Second.
Okay, approved by Kevin and a second from Kara. Any further conversations? None being heard, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carried 6-0 to approve the minutes. Next order of business is the June 11th Traffic Safety Board meeting minutes. Was the last meeting that this board had. Any comments, concerns, or revisions that are necessary? None being heard or seen, is there a motion to approve the minutes as?
I will move to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Okay, so motion by Kevin to approve and a second from Dan. Any further comments? None being heard, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 0. Motion carried 6-0 to approve those minutes. Yay, we moved through that really quick this evening. All right, for everybody that is in the audience, normally we don't go through those minutes that quick, so hopefully that's a good sign for everybody here this evening. Just so everyone is aware, as we go through the agenda, as we go through the meeting this evening, we will not go through the agenda in the order of the agenda. We will go through the order of the agenda as people are signed in for the events are signed in. Therefore, for your item, once you are signed in, once your item is there, you can leave and don't have to wait through the rest of the agenda, but you are always more than welcome to stay for the entire evening. We're always happy to have the company. As we go through the agenda, what we will do first is we will call up the agenda item that we're going to go through. We will give a background on that agenda item and what the reason is that it's on the agenda for the overview of the board here. We will then open up the public comment period. We'll ask you to come up here to the microphone. If you're called up to the microphone and wish to speak, we ask that you state your name and address. The meetings here are being recorded and they are being live streamed. That recording will allow all of the minutes to be captured correctly and all of the information that we need for the minutes. As you come up to the podium to speak, you'll be granted 3 minutes to speak. After about 2.5 minutes, we will give you a warning that you've got about 30 seconds left to go. And then at 3 minutes, we will give you the double bell. If we have the bell tonight, we have the bell. So we get a single bell at 2.5 minutes. You'll get a double bell at 3 minutes, indicating that your time is up. As you come up to speak, just a reminder, we have received copies of all of the correspondence that you have already had with the town. So anything that you have shared with the town, you do not need to reiterate with us because we've all already read through it. So use your 3 minutes to your advantage. When it comes to decisions that are made by this board, after we go through that part, we will then open up the board. We will then open up the meeting to this board for conversation, for resolution, and recommendations. So you are aware this board is not a law-making board. This is a board that makes recommendations to the town board. So any action that requires legal action would have to be sent over to the town board to take any legal action through Councilmember Zucala. If it's anything that involves just within the individual departments or individual liaisons, that's why we have the liaisons here. It can be sent directly to those departments for them to address and start to work on as early as tomorrow. What else do I have to do? So you are also aware this board follows the recommendations of the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, also known as the MUTCD. That is a published document from the federal government. We are required to follow those rules that are set forth in that path to make sure that the road network is uniform throughout the federal highway system. So we do follow that. Those are the recommendations that we will follow. There are some leeway within some of those rules, and we will go through those throughout the course of the evening if there are issues that come up. When it comes to traffic calming devices in the town, everybody will come up here. I'm sure there's at least one, if not two items on this agenda this evening where people will ask for speed bumps. Just so you are aware, the town of Amherst does not currently have a speed bump or speed hump policy. Any action requiring the use of speed bumps and speed humps would require there to be a policy set forth and approved by the town board and also the highway superintendent. As of this point, there has not been support for that. This board, however, is in favor and of support of there being a plan put in place for that to happen. However, in order to do that, we would need test streets, residents willing to do that, and an overwhelming majority of residents of that street to be in support of that in order for that to move forward. So we've had a couple instances where we've tried to do it. However, we have not been able to move forward because of resident opposition on those individual streets. The town will require, from the town board perspective and the highway superintendent, along with the police and emergency response, they're going to be looking for somewhere between 50 to 70% of the residents on the street being in favor of those speed humps or speed bumps to be put in place in order to start a pilot, in order to start moving with some sort of plan. And as of now, that has not occurred. Also, when it comes to stop signs, there will be people, I'm sure, in this meeting this evening that will ask for stop signs, just so everybody is aware when you come up to speak. Stop signs are traffic control devices. Stop signs are not speed control devices. So just keep that in mind as you speak. If you have any questions regarding that, you're always welcome to look on your phones, look anywhere, and check out the ramifications of placing unwarranted stop signs and how stop signs control the traffic and the implications that will happen, which will come up in our meeting this evening, of people running stop signs and enforcement of stop signs because they are unwarranted. So they are traffic control devices, not speed control devices. With that, I think I've covered majority of what we need to cover, so you're aware of what is going on as we move through the agenda. We will ask questions of you this evening as well if we have questions. We'll try to move this along as fast as we can because we do have a rather lengthy agenda this evening. So with that, our first person signed in this evening, ironically, is for agenda item number 1, which is for Maple Road, Old Lime, and the Maple West Elementary School, a request for a left turn signal in the westbound direction. So with that, I will turn it over to Chris for background on this item.
Good evening, members and the public here. The location, like the chairman said, is at Old Lime and Maple. The request is for a westbound left turn. This is a signalized intersection. The residents' reasons for asking for a left turn arrow is that westbound lefts are backing up when they're trying to enter the elementary school on the south side. Left turning drivers are turning against a green light through, and that can result in conflicts, particularly at the end of a green light phase. They're trying to beat that rush and have to wait an extra cycle, which can potentially lead to accidents should there be some driver error. Maple West parent was involved in a crash at the intersection last year. This is looking westbound, and there is a dedicated left stacking lane, but there is not an accompanying left turn arrow. That is the request before you tonight. When looking at the intersection phasing, it's a fairly simple phasing plan. You've got westbound, eastbound, northbound, and southbound. There are no arrows, currently at that intersection, any direction. Here's a turning movement diagram. This is a diagram that shows you flow of traffic, north being up. The wider the band, the heavier the traffic. Each one of these lines represents a turn. Focus your attention on this 288. That's what the average traffic that is turning left at that intersection. That's the total number for the day. This was taken in April of last year. So you are getting school numbers. Obviously, that would go down off school hours or off school months. You last reviewed this in 2022, where the criteria was not met for a left turn phase. It was also recommended by this board that the town not pursue a left phase, as the platoon of vehicles all turning left at once can exacerbate the internal driveway congestion, resulting in backups, potentially blocking the intersection and eastbound traffic through that intersection. When looking at the crashes, we looked at the last 3 years. There were 14 total crashes, 8 rear ends, 2 T-bones, 1 person driving under the influence, 1 lane departure, 1 loss of control on a motorcycle. And when you look at lefts, there is a criteria specific to how many preventable accidents could be prevented if a left turn phase was implemented. Again, we only had 1. I think it's the same one that the resident mentioned, where a parent or teacher experienced a collision at that intersection. This is a photograph of that accident just immediately after occurring. In this situation, north is up. We have a fairly decent long stack going eastbound of vehicles. This person in the front stopped in the through lane instead of utilizing the center turn lane, therefore backing up the vehicles. It looks like this person went when they saw a gap, and an eastbound inside lane person was still continuing through, and that's the result of that collision. At least that's what it appeared.
So Chris, just real quick on that, is it possible that that car was using that lane where it is because of stacked cars in the left turning lane that they couldn't get into it?
Repeat that again. I didn't quite hear
So
you.
we're saying that that accident was potentially caused because the car that's in front of that line did not use the center left turning lane to
yes.
make their left turn. Is it possible that they stopped there because cars were stacked in the left turning lane to make the left turn so they couldn't?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you can see the amount of stacked vehicles in that westbound was only 2.
Okay,
So, yeah, to your point, I think you'd see a line of traffic.
okay.
In this situation, I don't see that. So when looking at the criteria, you look at delay, volumes, conflicts, and crashes. For delay itself, you look to see how many vehicles are turning left. You're trying to hit a number that is 50 or greater. In the AM peak, which mimics the drop-off time, we counted 93. That's over 50. So yes, that criteria was met for delay in the AM. During the pickup hour, there was only 36 left-ins. That did not beat the 50. Volumes, you're going to see something similar, where I'm sorry, that's just a known. We get this data off of our counts. But what you take is the product of the westbound lefts versus the eastbound through. When multiplying that, you want to hit a number greater than 50,000. In the AM, it was hit. In the PM, similar to the delay, it was not met, and that 50,000 criteria was not hit. Conflicts were not counted because we don't keep the video from last April or last school year. And accidents, as we kind of already mentioned, only 1 was correctable. So you need 5 or more left turning accidents that are correctable in a 12-month period. That's not hit. And that concludes the presentation portion.
Thank you, Chris. With that, we'll open it up to public comment, and we have Angela Marinucci.
Good evening. My name is Angela Marinucci, 258 Robin Hill Drive. I am the resident who emailed most recently about this intersection. I believe the afternoon or the morning following this crash. And I find it very sad that we have to wait for a crash to say, hey, let's get this left turn signal into the elementary school. But I understand why that works. A couple things that I'd like to add in terms of context. I rise as a resident. I'm mom of 3 students at Maple West Elementary. I'm also the vice president of the PTA there and a Maple West Girls on the Run coach, which is 16 weeks a year, 2 mornings a week, in front of the school, so I watch this intersection happen often. Our school has been closed for open enrollment for several years. We rose to 670 students last year, which is at least 10 more than the year before. This year, we don't have final numbers for 25-26, but we're looking at that expected to be in the high 680s, and we are still a year out from the COVID baby boom, which is expected to come in 2026. We added modular classrooms to our school because we have outgrown our school, and there are a number of reasons for that, and this is not a school board meeting, but just to give you the context of the parents and the amount of people who are going to be continuing to use this intersection and seeking more safety in terms of the left lane. Chris, if you could go back to the picture, like this one right here. Oop, yep. So if you see right there, that's actually a Tim Hortons for those who may not be familiar. It is very common in the morning to take a right into the Tim Hortons and loop back up Old Lyme to come in through straight, which makes it even less, oh, you can see the traffic path there, which makes it even less safe for those inside of the Tim Hortons and the people coming through, because if you're behind a bus trying to make a left at the left turn signal, it is incredibly difficult. So you will see frequently parents, not me, but those that come up this other way and come through. In addition, I did review your notes from the December 22 meeting, and I thank you for your hard work and the way that this board really looks at all of these things. I've spoken with our school principal about changing the traffic pattern inside the school, but since the time that you've looked at it, there is a dedicated teacher, librarian, Mr. Worthington. He's amazing. If you ever drive past on May 4th, he dresses up in a full Star Wars costume, but he navigates traffic inside right there at that intersection, so the buses go, I'm really bad with my directions, to the left on that side, and the drop-off there is on the right. Currently, traffic that's coming in for drop-off comes in and goes straight across and up and around. The school is open, if needed, to having them make a hard right there and adding more traffic pattern. But I will say over the last year or two, the backup has gotten significantly less, I think because of Mr. Worthington. He's incredible. He's also very much in favor of this left turn signal, and we had a long conversation about it, but it would be safer and more exciting. So I ask that you, when you're considering this, consider the factors, of course, that you need to. We are nearly double the federal requirements for the morning hours. I know that we're not there in the afternoon for a myriad of reasons. We are a later opening school. We are a 9 a.m. start time, which means drop-off starts at 8:35, which is just perfect timing if you got to get downtown for 9 o'clock. So we do hit some of that morning traffic too. Maple West has a light in front of their school. We are the largest elementary school in the Williamsville School District. The reason for Maple West light is because there was a death, or Maple East light is because there was a death there. And I'm asking that you please, look at all the factors, but also consider what the next couple of years of this intersection is going to look like for the students, our other resident children, and everybody across. And I ask that you please support a left turn signal here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Questions?
Any other individuals to speak on this agenda item? None being heard or seen, we'll close the public comment and open it up to the board for discussion. Just to correct one thing that you did say, at Maple East, there is no signal to the school. Nope, there's no signals at Maple East. The signals are actually for the hospital, and then they're at the school. Actually, the school sits actually between, I say this because my kids, Culpeper. Right, so the school there actually sits between two. Yeah, Maple East does not have its own light. Maple East has its own problems as well because everything gets trapped between the two lights. So Maple Road is the problem. Yeah. Yep. So with that, comments from the board before I make my comments.
Well, I heard two changes. There's now somebody actively directing traffic inside the school property to get people where they should be, which would mitigate that whole backup problem we were worried about. That's a good thing. And I also heard that there's the new modules that's going to, you're reacting to an increase in the school population that you expect is going to get even greater. So those are two changes that I think have a positive effect on this request.
Okay.
Because, I mean, if there's somebody in there making it so the traffic doesn't back up out onto Maple, why, you know, that's a good thing.
Any other comments?
I think it's worth noting that from 2022 to 2025, the counts are higher. So if we're expecting a further increase and we're already observing an organic increase in traffic as well from the previous time it was measured, I think that's something we should take into consideration to try and anticipate having the need for the left turn signal as opposed to waiting until we hit the guidance number.
Okay. Chris, can you pull up the, on your presentation, the MyoVision map
Yeah, sure.
with the traffic flow patterns?
Oh, yeah.
So looking at the traffic heading east, the other direction, they actually have a higher count making the left onto Old Lime, 380, than turning into the school.
Total day, yes.
Total day. So there isn't a peak time that movement's happened. That's just happening continually throughout the course of the day where we're getting a spike
Well,
in the one direction on the other end.
I think those 380 cars, though, they kind of go and they flow through. They don't back up into the school parking lot for that 1 hour.
The reason why I'm asking the question is we're technically creating, if you put the left turning arrow going into the school, it changes the entire timing cycle of the intersection, and we have more cars actually making the left-hand turn onto Old Lime, that we potentially create a conflict on the other side of not having clearance time as things are happening for those cars to make the turn, that it's going to cause another problem. Do we need to actually install the turning arrows in both movements?
Could we do a time for like that hour in the morning? Like between what, 8 and 9 or 9 and 10?
No, it's more, you
Yeah.
understand what I'm saying there, Chris? That
I do.
you're gonna stop the traffic in one direction and you have cars that currently are able to clear to make it. But if you're gonna put the turning arrow on one side, you just put it both directions at the same time to make the turn.
No, no problem.
Yeah, and I understand where you're going, where I'm looking at it from the standpoint of we have other intersections in the town where we have a turning arrow only on one leg doing something similar to this, which then creates other conflicts during the course of the day. So we're putting a turning arrow in at the intersection to address 1 hour of traffic, but that turning arrow is going to be there the other 23 hours of the day as well. So one car, any point of the day, getting into that lane to make the left-hand turn is going to trigger that left arrow to turn on, causing the delay in the intersection, creating problems the other 23 hours of the day for the opposing left at the same time. Right?
Yes, but
Looking at the other 23 hours of the day.
I just want to point out, one vehicle would trip the minimum amount of time for lefts versus, our detection will detect, if it's 7 cars, it'll hold it to the maximum number. So there's different timings. So if it's a single car, you're only holding up the eastbound throughs for a minimal amount of time. If it's during that school hour, it's holding that left turn green for a longer time to what's called the max. And yes, you are going to be adding more delay to the eastbound throughs. And when you add a phase, you'll likely have to steal from the other legs, which is the minor legs. That time has to come from somewhere. So you may have a little bit of more degradation of level of service or more delay on the minor approaches, which is Old Lyme and the school itself.
And we already have the problem of Tim Hortons across the street. So I guess I'm not, I'm in agreement that we probably are warranted to install the left-hand turning arrow, but I think there's other complexity on the other 23 hours of the day that potentially get created by adding that in, that there's an additional traffic study that's needed to be done at the intersection by somebody to figure out what the optimal plan is for the intersection, rather than us just saying, yes, Town of Amherst Highway Department, Engineering Department, install a left-hand turning arrow.
Maples County, isn't it?
Maple is county, but the town controls the signals.
Ultimately, this county has to sign off on any modifications to that signal. We have to apply for a permit, so our justification has to be sound.
So if we need to have the sound details and support to install that, have all the numbers justified to apply to the county to get them to approve that, what are we going to need to do that? We're going to need a more intensive study of the intersection, correct, Chris?
Yes. You'd want somebody to look at that opposing left to see if we're close to the criteria on that one. And then we'd want to see a capacity analysis to determine, what added delays are going to be shown after the addition of left turn arrows.
So with that being said, is that something that the town could do, or is that something that the town would need to contract out?
That is something we'd likely contract out.
And if it's done, we should do it like in September or October.
Well, I was
before-
going to say if it's something that the town could do internally, the first week of school has the most parents dropping off. If we could squeeze it in at that point, that would give us the highest numbers to
Yeah, there's-
justification. So, but
There's a lot of other stuff going on.
but-
There's a lot of
So-
other stuff that makes accidents on its own that first week.
So I think at this point, my recommendation would be that we forward this to find the funding source to contract it out to have the proper justifications done to see if it's warranted for the installation of the turning arrow.
So we'd have to bump it up to the town board to find funding.
It'd have to be a funding source for it from the town to contract it out.
So it's a town board thing.
Kevin,
would like to know
you
if-
shouldn't, yeah, go ahead, Dan.
I would like to know if there's enough school buses servicing this school, or are the buses full or empty? I'd like to know a status report on school buses as part of this study.
Yeah.
Well, are the school buses being utilized efficiently?
I just again want to note the increase in the student population and that really being the driver. Not necessarily, it's offset by the bus utilization, which is, I think efficient, but it's that there are far more children at the school now than the last time we looked at this.
So at this point, from consensus of the board, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we're all in favor for the installation of the arrow. Am I correct or incorrect? However, we can't make that recommendation to the county just based on the whim and the numbers that we have. So we need to figure out how we get the number support to go to the county for them to authorize the installation since it's a county road. So that's Chris. And I think Chris will then end up going back to you guys at the town board. Yep.
What time does school start in the morning there? Thank you.
So
Yeah.
Chris, do we refer this to,
Refer to engineering for a traffic engineering study.
okay, we'll refer to engineering for traffic engineering study and next steps from there. So that will, we're referring it at this point. With that being referred on here, most likely, depending on that study, if the study warrants it, engineering and the town board would probably move forward, or they'll give that study back to us for further recommendations and considerations of options. And then it'll get added back to the agenda. Okay,
And this is the process.
thank you. With that, our next item on the agenda is item 8, which is 199 Park Club Lane. Request to remove the right turn restriction onto Park Club Lane.
Awesome, sorry.
Chairman, the residents opted not to speak, but,
Okay.
you know, if it comes up and they want to, I told them to raise their hand.
Okay, thank you.
What number is this?
Okay, so item 8 is for Park Club Lane. That is also the Roswell Cancer Center. And there's a request to remove right turn restriction on the private driveway coming out of 199 Park Club Lane. We'll get into the location of that in a minute, but the resident's reason is that when there is a right turn restriction out of a private lot, the drivers are then forced to make a left onto Park Club and then find a place to turn into, to then ultimately turn left, which adds more time, it adds difficulty, and it creates additional conflicts on the roadway and can lead to more dangerous situations. Obviously, turning right is less dangerous than multiple lefts. So here's Roswell Park off Park Club Lane. That is primarily more medical towards the south, closer to Maine, and then residential is more north when you travel up Park Club Lane. Here is an aerial of all the restricted private driveways. So if you look at these colors, these little dots, blue means it's restricted to the right, yellow means it's restricted to the left, and red is the request, which is also a right turn restriction. This is an example. This is actually at, I think, 199 Park Club, where the developer, the petitioner, I would say, was asked to put in that right turn restriction at time of site plan. And this is what the resident is asking to be removed. In terms of crashes, there are no crashes in this section for the past 3 years. So with that, I'll pass it over to you guys.
So with that, I will just ask if there's anyone in the audience that wishes to speak on this agenda item to open up the public comment period. If you don't have to speak if you don't want to.
Hi, my name is Lynn Konovitz. I'm the husband of a breast cancer survivor. She used to go to Western New York Breast Care, and it basically is now part of Roswell Park. Usually when you get a Roswell Park, it's a good thing. It's not like having Amazon or UPS or FedEx with a lot of trucks. It's not like having a coffee shop with a big drive-through. All we're asking is this committee's duty, which is traffic safety, make it easier for cancer survivors and cancer patients to get home. These people are often sick, undergoing treatment, and because, how should we say, some residents don't want people to use a public road. This is a public road, it's not a private road. My wife and others have to make, as Chris mentioned, 3 left turns out of Roswell, out at Park Club Lane to Main, and then another left turn at Main at North Forest just to get home. It's crazy. Well, she can do a couple of things. She can, if she wants, go up a little further, make a right into some other doctor's office, and then make a left to go back. Again, it's the same traffic pattern. I find it preposterous. I've never heard of an illegal right turn. I understand left turns because they are dangerous, but right turns to go home, it's a no-brainer. And again, these people are sick often coming out of Roswell Park. Make it safer for them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would wish to speak on this agenda item?
Chairman Scott can add context to how those signs went up too.
Okay. Are you signed in for another? You're not signed in. Okay. We'll just have you sign in when you're done. That's fine.
I'm Lisa Dirtle. I'm a resident of Chateau Terrace, 92 Chateau Terrace. And I was just saying to my husband as this gentleman was speaking that the same thing happens to me. I'm also a patron or a patient at the same organization. I'm constantly having trouble getting out of there. It's really roundabout, and if I go home, I'm actually okay because I know where the left-hand turn driveway is, but that's only if there's not a lot of traffic. I usually make an 8 o'clock in the morning appointment because of that. If I have to go on to something else and go the opposite way, the same thing happens to me. And I always end up darting diagonally across the street and turning into a ear, nose, and throat doctor across the street diagonally, have to swing around that parking lot. And I just hate doing all of that to get out because it just seems to create more problems, especially if I don't have that early morning appointment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on the agenda item? None being heard, we will close the public comment and turn it over to Scott Marshall from the planning for additional context on the placement of the signs. That mic should be on there. You can use mine too. Empty seat. You can be my friend.
Have to borrow it. All right. On both the north and south sides of Park Club Lane, as part of the site plan approvals for all those developments, at the request of, if Chris wants to zoom out a little further, to the north, request of all those residents, planning board placed a condition on all the site plans that those driveways be restricted to either no lefts or no right, depending which side of the street it's on. That's why they're there, is for that neighborhood, which you happen to live in. So it's your neighbors that actually requested it. The planning board saw fit to actually place those restrictions on those driveways. Oh, believe me, we probably had 20 to 30 people every time we had a site plan at a planning board meeting. When we don't want all this traffic from those people and those businesses coming up through our neighborhood.
So as part of the site plans reviews, I will also add that this board reviewed those site plans for that Roswell development and sites at that property. And if you look at where the railroad right-of-way is in that area, which is where you also go down the hill, there were actually original site plans and requests that came in as part of the homeowners association and the developer to actually restrict the street, remove the street, and dead end both ends of that street.
Once upon a time.
Once upon a time. So one of the requests to not dead end that street in both directions and not make it for emergency access only in that area. That was the appeasement, was the installation of the no rights and no lefts was part of that as well.
And being conditions of site plan approval would actually require the property owner or somebody with the property owner's permission to actually file for and obtain approval to remove those conditions from the planning board. Tune of that is $1,215 just for the application.
So this board, those signs are not placed by the town. Those signs are placed by the landowner as a condition of development for the site as required by the planning board. Since those are not town's place signs within the right of way, I'll just ask Captain Brown from the police department on the enforcement of those signs. Sorry.
Signs placed on private property are not enforceable, so even if you made a right or left in contradiction to the sign, it's not something you can get a ticket for. If it's installed, if it's on the private property and it's installed by the owner of the property, it will not be enforceable.
Very, very
So,
quiet.
With that, in order to have the signs removed, it would be a petition to the planning board as a site plan modification of the landowner, or a petition request to have those replaced and removed, which you'd have to file the permit for it. However, they are on private property, so when it comes to police enforcement, that's where that stands. Make a right. Yep. Yes.
So the other option here is if these properties ever come to the town for another modification of their site, that opens up the door for this board to chime in and say, we've had complaints about the restrictions, and as a condition for the approval that they're seeking, please remove the sign. This board is not the one that asked for those signs, and they can ask for them to be removed in future reviews should those folks come to the board.
Yep. Thank you. With that, we will close item 8 on the agenda. Our next individual signed in is for item number 4, which is Heim and Deer Ridge intersection signage review.
Okay, we'll jump right into it. At the intersection of Heim Road and Deer Ridge, this is Heim Elementary School, another school item before you. The request is for proper signage to be installed at that intersection. Mrs. Butera brought this to our attention. She is a crossing guard. She is in the audience, and she works for the town. And during her service at this intersection, helping those cross, she's had some close calls with physical vehicles either hitting her, some other guards, or school children. And she wants to assure all proper signage is present. Here's the location. Again, Heim Elementary School is to the south. Deer Ridge is a local street that services a subdivision. Residential. Heim Road is a county road. This is not a signalized intersection. In fact, it is uncontrolled on Heim Road. Deer Ridge has a stop sign, and Ball, or the entrance of the school, has a stop sign as well. There was a past resident request who asked for the slow down message for the flashing beacons to be replaced with actual speeds of vehicles. Right now, if you exceed the speed limit shown, it says slow down. That person also asked for repainting of the crosswalk, a rectangular rapid flashing pedestrian beacon specific to the intersection. They asked for radar feedback signage for the speeds, and asked for tree trimming for visibility purposes. This is how it's signed, probably kind of hard to read, but this is how it's signed now. We have an advanced speed zone. We have a flashing beacon that flashes during school hours specific to the school zone, dropping the speed to 25. We have a school crossing assembly sign. We have a pedestrian crossing sign, And in the opposite direction, it mimics it, except it has a school assembly sign ahead. So there's some inconsistencies here. There are 2 crosswalks I want to mention that are uncontrolled at that intersection. So when a situation like this, we refer to that manual of uniform traffic control devices. They provide diagrams and figures to provide guidance to agencies to post proper signage. And this is what it's saying. It says you've got an optional school assembly sign. You've got a mandatory school zone ahead reduction. You've got the reduction sign, can be beacon, cannot be. In this situation, it is. You've got a this is a pedestrian crosswalk assembly sign ahead, and you've got the crosswalk assembly sign with an arrow, mimics on the other side as well. So that's not what we have here. So there is some room for improvement. I did run by what now this slide is applying that MUTCD figure specific to Heim. Again, you're getting an ahead sign, you've got a reduction, you've got the crosswalk, and you've got the crosswalk again. Also, I failed to mention there's an end school speed limit sign that is also mandatory. That is not there. That is not there now. I ran this by the county earlier this week. They concur with this signing plan. Should we implement it, it would be the town's responsibility if you make that recommendation. I just wanted to add one more thing. There is an optional yield line application, also known as shark teeth, where you can place these ahead of the crosswalk and an uncontrolled crosswalk. This is uncontrolled, being that Heim is not stop controlled or signalized controlled. So with that, I'll pass it over to you guys.
Thank you. One question, Chris, you mentioned the end school zone speed limit sign. You said that that's mandated?
Yes. So how I'm reading it is the speed limit sign is optional. You know, the R2-1, bringing the speed up. But according to the county's traffic engineer, and from what I can tell, you are really supposed to have that end school speed limit sign. And that could be new to this most current book. I don't know the history of that, but we don't see that a lot posted in any of our school zones. And
Okay.
I can ask Al that. I don't know if we commonly use that.
I would say, I don't think we commonly use that one. We've always just posted the new speed limit sign again.
I don't even think we do that. I think.
Okay.
Maybe.
All right, thank you. With that, we'll open it up to public comment, and we have Francine Butera signed in this evening. If she would like to speak. Sorry, I didn't see you didn't. Yep, you are welcome. Yep, come on up. I didn't see you were checked as no, Francine. So we have, state your name and we'll move along. We're on item number 4. Item number 4, there you are, Eric.
All right. I'm Eric Corson, 248 Heim Road. I'm speaking on this behalf. First off, I want to say thank you for having me here today and addressing this concern and bringing it up. It was brought up a couple years ago. Can you hear me okay? It was brought up a couple years ago. There was some improvements that were done to it. They added the flashing amber light and the speed sign that shows people driver's speed. When it was originally put up, I'll just mention a couple comments. It would show the speed of the vehicles no matter what it was. At some point it was changed. We're only above 30 miles an hour. It says slow down. Based on my profession, I can tell you a lot of people don't even pay attention to writing. Numbers are much more impactful. So my request was to change it back to where it actually physically shows the speed. That's more of a grabbing your attention type thing, in my professional opinion. I did mention that. Apologize, I have a lot written down, so I'm trying to cut it, keep it short for you guys. The crosswalks are obviously now worn down. I went past there the other day. They used to be painted. The white's almost all completely gone. There was definitely some trees blocking the one sign, which is, I can't see it in that picture, but the trees were blocking it. I did ask for some type of crossing signal similar to what Casey has, where they installed it. I know these things all cost money. The town only has so much money. I can respect that. But for planning purposes, maybe this is something we can consider down the road. Maybe, even for the crossing guard, for pushing it to at least alert drivers more to slow down. I understand this town's huge. The police department does a great job of what they do. There's what they probably could use in our 30 officers, and we can have Amherst police sit there all the time and help do this type of stuff. But the realism is that you got to look at engineering controls, things that we could put into place to try to help keep it safer, just like anywhere in this town. So some of my thoughts, what I threw out, were just ideas of things we can maybe look at implementing at some point down the road. But some of the stuff is pretty simple, like the painting of the crosswalk. I'm not sure if that's up to code with just 2 white lines, or if it's supposed to be more like a railroad track. I'm not too sure. So that was what I had to say with that. I do appreciate you guys listening to my concerns, bringing this up, but obviously, walking with my children to school and watching the cross guards do their job, I'm actually shocked, honestly, that no one's been hurt in that or hit or darn close. I'm sure there has, it just has not been reported. So thank you very much again. Hopefully we can address these concerns at some point as budgets become available, money becomes available, and the county allows us to do some of this stuff maybe. And apparently that was a quick 2 minutes or 3. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item this evening? I'm just going to ask, well, we'll close public comment, open it up to the board. I'm just going to ask, there's 2 crosswalks there, correct, Chris?
Yes.
But we have 1 crossing guard?
There's 2.
There's 2. So are we crossing on both sides, or are the 2 crossing guards trying to cross everybody at one side of the?
Oh, she's a crossing guard.
There's 2. So we're. Okay. So. Okay. So first things, for this board, just for a vote, I'll make the motion for the changing of the signage per the site plan that Chris is providing to meet the updates and current standards to the MUTCD to change that signage along Heim Road. That's the motion.
second.
Is there a second?
I second.
So there's a second from Cynthia. Any further conversations on that?
I just have a clarification. I do want to correct myself. Chairman, you're correct. There is a 35 mile per hour speed limit sign that designates the current end of the school zone. So you supplement it with this end school speed limit subblank.
Okay, thank you. So we would just add that sign to the current
Yes.
sign.
Just
Okay,
point of clarification.
okay. So all in favor of changing the sign configuration to what is indicated to meet current MUTCD guidelines? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So that's carried 6-0 to move to highway to make those changes to the signage to meet the current codes.
So, sir, that does include the crosswalk signage that you just asked about. It's not the flashing one, not the, push button one, but it's the signs are included in that vote.
So the other part of that is the installation of the shark teeth and the road painting on the street. I would make the motion to refer to highway to install the shark teeth on the street as indicated, and also upgrade the painting of the crosswalks to the high visibility crosswalks, which would have the bars on them rather than just the 2 lines. So that will add the ladders in the crosswalk as well for additional visibility of the crosswalk based on the speeds of the street and the school zone. So that's the motion that I'm making now for others on the board, if there is a second.
I second.
Any further conversation or comments on that? None being heard, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So that motion is carried 6-0 as well. So with that, that'll all be referred to Highway Department. That would go to Al within the Highway Department. I don't know where they are within their painting plans for this year with paving, moving stuff around, allocated budgets, that'll all go to the highway superintendent. Obviously, the crews will go out there for replacement of those signs. They're normally pretty quick with those, depending on getting it flagged out to do. Hopefully, they can get that part of it done before the start of the school year. When it comes to the painting, it'll work into the cycles that they have of when the street is scheduled to be repaved, when it's already scheduled to have painting done, or if there are additional cans of paint sitting around from other projects that are left over and they have the ability to get out there and do that. I don't know, Al, if you have anything else to add on that. Okay. Any other conversations on this item? I mean, that's what we can do at this point to improve that area, get some more visibility into there. If we're still seeing struggles in there, I think the next thing that we would potentially look at is getting incremental counts at that intersection to see if it meets the criteria for the rapid RFB, which would be, that would be the flashing beacons that you see that were installed on Paradise Road in front of East High School and exist at North High School as well. But that would be the next, that's kind of the progression. Would take these steps first, see if that makes the improvement. If not, that would be the next step.
Well, to his point about the current signs that are, what says slow down instead of the numbers, it used to say numbers, now it says slow down.
So Chris,
On that one.
Yeah.
Chris can comment on that.
So those are the town's beacons. We have control of those signals. The highway department, right now they're off, right? Because there's no school. So if it's the board's pleasure, you can make a recommendation to the highway department for when they activate them for the school season to make that change. But it's got to be clear. What do you guys want, you know?
I'd like to make that recommendation, that we switch it from just the generic slow down to, you're going 35, you're going 33. I think it's more effective with the numbers.
That's easy to do.
What I don't want is inconsistency across the town. You know, one school wants it one way, another school wants it a different way. Al, do you want to chime in? Is this how all of them are programmed, where it says slow down after the limit is hit, 25?
The one on Mill Street,
But it flashes the speed.
Let's start to slow down.
I don't remember.
correct.
Hey, we did that.
And you guys asked to be changed to slow down. That was last fall or last.
Okay.
We changed it.
Heard that before.
I would like to just stay consistent townwide. And so we'll review to see if this is how we'd have the other ones. And if not, I'm okay with passing that along to highway to get it back to what it belongs to.
So, sure. Okay.
Yeah, I have to look into that.
So we will, we'll take that under consideration. We'll refer that to engineering and highway to review the signs that are out there, how they're programmed, to make sure they're programmed consistently throughout the town based on the guidance that they have. Okay?
And just so it's clear, we would prefer numbers. If we could.
I would prefer consistency, and if there's a recommendation from anything that says which way it should be. I mean, there's everything that we have on different books, different guidelines, different traffic studies that are out there. Everything imaginable to man has been studied at this point, so can we find something rather than opinions of people to say that this is the way it should be programmed and then meet that consistent standard?
There's no book, you can turn to that says do it this way. It gives you a lot of options. They're all acceptable. But again, I think it's a little more defensible if you have a consistency throughout the town.
So.
Okay.
We can have another person that had it installed in Mill that could be saying the complete opposite of the person here. So we're making the recommendation to change to one or the other on a whim. So before, I would prefer we don't make a recommendation. We leave that to engineering and highway to determine what's best. You can tell me I'm wrong. I don't care. Feel free. That's why we're all here. So there's 6 of us on one person.
This is the Traffic Safety Board. They're the Engineering and Highway Department. I don't know.
Make them all the same.
Make them all the same for sure. Just do you want them to slow down or do you want them numbers?
Numbers.
So I'm leaving it to the experts to decide.
Well,
I'm not sure how we ever changed that.
the experts rely on our guidance, that's the thing.
Yeah, but we're 6. There's more engineers that sit in the engineering department than are sitting at this table.
Or two.
Yeah, you get both
Confused.
Any further conversation, or leave it as I've recommended to highway and engineering to figure out?
I say we leave it as you suggested. I'm fine with that.
Kara, which would you like to see?
Same, let's, I think that we've had a good plan for addressing the needs here, and if further issues come up, we'll address them as they come up.
Dan, which would you prefer?
I prefer numbers.
So Dan wants numbers. Kevin? Numbers. Consistency.
Consistency is going to be a given. Do you want numbers, or do you want slow down?
Well, I don't know which is better.
Well, that's,
Meantime, consistent.
at this point, it's opinion.
It's four votes to refer to highway and engineering for the best plan based on information and guidance that they have. 2 votes to put the numbers, so it goes to engineering and highway.
That's it.
The numbers.
Okay, so with that, we will close item number 4 on the agenda. The next person we have signed in is item number 5, which is Dodge Road south of North French. Request for flashing school beacons with radar feedback signs. So we'll keep on talking on the same topic. We'll just move to a different school and different area.
Okay, you're going to see a very similar presentation of a different school. Again, showing you what's there, what's suggested, and a plan. So let's jump right into it. We are at Dodge Elementary School. They want flashing school beacons with radar feedback signs. So the sign that we were just talking about that warns drivers entering a school zone of their speed and telling them what the speed limit sign or what the speed zone is. Residents' reasons is that they're speeding close to Dodge Elementary School. Here is Dodge Elementary School, bordered by Dodge Road to the east and North French to the north in a triangle. Here is the current school signage. So a little bit of an outdated reduced speed limit sign with a subplaque school. You've got a older style crosswalk assembly sign. Then you've got a school speed limit sign. That one is correct. Then you've got an old style crosswalk sign. Then going westbound, a school sign. And then on the Dodge side, you have a school assembly sign, then a crosswalk school sign going north, and then a school, reduced school zone sign. So this is a little bit different figure because there are no sidewalks or crosswalks surrounding the school. So for that, we turn to this figure, 7B-4, I think it's called, and they tell you guidance for when there isn't a crosswalk. And essentially, it is a optional school assembly sign with a school subplaque, an advanced warning of a school speed limit reduction. Then you've got the school speed limit reduction, and that's it. And then the end sign. So when you apply that to Heim, why does that say Heim? Sorry, this should say Dodge and North French. It mimics that MUTCD figure. Again, we don't normally put up the optional school sign. We put the advanced school zone, then the school zone, then the end. So you have that in all directions. I think I already talked about this. There is no signal, there is no crosswalk. And the request was to convert those signs into a flashing beacon. This is the location of those, where those would go. And there is some guidance on when to install flashing beacons. Those are in areas where there's a higher emphasis where one is needed. That's multi-lane arterials, limited sight distance, and heavy traffic, and where compliance benefit is significant. So you can throw pedestrians in there, crossings, just like that one on Heim. You had a curve involved, you had crosswalks. We got a lot going on. In this area, you don't have crosswalks. There aren't the curves. But with that, I'll pass it over to you guys for your discussion.
So with that, I will open it up to Ken Mons.
Yeah, good evening. I'm the one that I talked to a guy who was putting in a new sign right across from my house. I'm at 1965, which is the second house down on the west side, from across the street from Dodge. And I said, what's the idea of us trying to get those flashing lights? He said, well, you have to talk to the town, which I did. And yeah, he says these are pretty, the problem you have that I see, I've lived there for 40 years, Dodge Road coming off from New Road, past French coming this way, the traffic that comes across that North French Road is unbelievable. The speed that they're going. I'll just mention this. My concern would be, because you get a lot of young kids going down to north, and if you probably parked the police in my yard, you could get an idea, and I don't think I'd be exaggerating, 50 miles an hour through that, right past the school. I don't know if that would, I don't know, and maybe all situations will be different, and I know you say you want things to be one way. What I wouldn't want to do is to encourage those kids to say, I was going 60 miles an hour past that sign. I don't want to create something worse than what it is. What I would like to do is, I don't know if they don't care. I just don't think they're aware. Because as you come around that corner, and you're coming, if you're trying to make that light, the school is so far back, you don't see it. But that you can't see all the shrubbery and everything. And, those signs are just, people are just doing this and they're coming and they're driving. So I don't know. That's just my opinion. I think that would help. I think you would make people a lot more aware and slow some people down. I know we don't have much, but there are some sidewalks there. The lady next door to me, I've seen her have her child cross the street to go to that school. He goes there. This is his last year. So again, what we can do to slow people down by at least making them aware that there's a school there. I don't think that they just don't see it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this agenda item this evening in the audience? Are you signed in on here for another item? And well, when you hear your name, I'll mark it down.
Sam Smith. Sam Smith.
Okay.
So you said it's the same as the other topic, and I know that when we were talking about Harlem Road months ago at this point, one topic that came up was possibly doing like a pinch point at the crosswalk. I know there's no crosswalk in this particular scenario, but you said it's like a similar situation as the previous scenario. And if you create like a pinch point where you're crossing the road, I know he's talking about the speed limit signs, and there's no crosswalk in this scenario, but like something else to think about maybe as a pinch point of.
You're saying for a traffic calming measure,
Yeah.
to narrow the road down.
Yeah, so you're
Got it.
doing these speed limits, you're doing these signs to say slow down, and that's is or is not working. So I'm just saying here's another tool that we can use to potentially do a traffic calming measure.
Okay. Thank you. Just so you know, if you have ideas, we have an open seat on the board. We're always welcome to more members. I said, if you have additional ideas, we have extra seats on the board, so we're always welcoming more members. If you are interested in joining, you can send a message to council members Zucala, and we'll take more people. Okay.
I would mention that Dodge is a county highway, so
Okay.
that would have to be implemented by them. Any type of geometry change would have to come from the county.
Okay. With that, any other residents wishing to speak on this particular item? None being heard or seen, we'll close the agenda item for public comment and open it up here to the board. The one comment that I would make is, in regard to this traffic sign, I would be hesitant to install the flashing beacons in this area just from the standpoint of the lack of sidewalks and the lack of pedestrian crossings in the area. We have those being placed in other areas for their effectiveness because of the crossings. So as we look at it from a consistency standpoint and keep that in mind, if we start placing signs all over the place with flashing lights, warning people of stuff, thinking something's going to be there, they're going to lose their effectiveness if they're all over the place. So in this particular area, we do not have crossing guards, we do not have crosswalks, we do not have sidewalks, we don't have pedestrians walking in this particular area, accessing the school currently. There is development in the area at this point that may change that and could be taken under further consideration at that point in time.
I was going to ask, how extensive is the pedestrian traffic into that school? Are there a lot of kids walking to school? It's mostly drop off, so we're warning people about a hazard that, I mean, yeah, like Eric says, if there's no sidewalks, they're just, these rapid flashing beacons are meant for crossings where there's pedestrians.
I mean,
So New Road is 40, and we all know what's happening to New Road right now. It's getting widened. So the resident's point is pretty valid that, you know, people may increase their speed on New Road coming into that school zone. But, you know, that's when we can rely on enforcement. You know, there's still a school speed limit zone. It drops to 35, and then it drops again during school hours to 25.
So, forgot one thing on this. So with that, I also want to make the motion similar as what we did before for the upgrading of the signs per the diagram that Chris provided to Highway Department to meet the current standards.
I'll second that.
Motion by me, second by Kara. Is there any further conversation on that? None being heard. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So that carries 6-0 for those changes to be referred to highway, similar as we did for the other item. The next item that I'll just do a quick roll call of the board here, or I'll just ask. Is anyone here on the board in favor of the installation of the flashing beacons in that stretch at this time? So with that, we will move to upgrade the signage in that area as indicated. And we will also refer it over to the police department based on the residents' concerns that once that area is reactivated for school starting, any additional police enforcement that can be applied to that area for enforcement of the posted speed limit signs in that area during school hours. All right, thank you.
Another thought for traffic and traffic calming. Can we achieve that by restriping the road?
We can't.
Because this is a county road. Is there anything we can do to refer to the county to investigate restriping that road or section of road to consider perhaps removal of the median to get cars to slow down?
I think that road is currently in need of a milling and repaving job from the county. God only knows when the county would get to it. It's not in the best condition. I think we could send a recommendation and referral to the county that in the future, should milling and repaving be done in that area, take into consideration any modifications to paving, stripings for traffic calming through that area, reduction of lanes. However, it is a county road, so that would be on the county, but I think it's warranted to provide that letter to the county of the concerns that are being brought forward to us in that area for them to take it into consideration, because I believe that is a stretch that's probably on their radar at some point in the next 10 years to get milled and paved. If you drive it, it's in pretty rough shape.
Can you zoom in at it, Chris?
Yeah, sure.
So that's exactly what we got now.
thought specifically.
2023.
Add shoulders, remove the median, which perhaps would have the calming effect of cars being driving past each other. They would naturally look to drive slow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'd want them to study the corridor as part of any milling and repaving job for traffic calming in the school zone area based on concerns of the school and residents of lack of compliance to school zone speeding. We can do that, right, Chris? Yep, so we'll refer to county based on that. Any further conversation on item 5? None being heard, we'll move to the next item that we have someone signed in for, which is on the old business section related to item A, which is the bike path crossing on North Forest near the Auden Apartments and pedestrian counts. I will just call out, I don't believe Chris has any information on that at this point. Do you, Chris? Because we're still waiting for those pedestrian counts, correct?
Yeah, so for the members of the public, you're welcome to speak, but I don't have anything prepared, given that we are still waiting on pedestrian counts. We attempted to count that last year, and we were unsuccessful. Actually, the day we showed up, school was not in session, oddly enough, so we lost that good day, and we're never able to make it out again. So it's on our plate to recount on a nice warm day when school resumes.
So that will potentially be also held at our September meeting, based on when that falls, based on when UB school starts again, if we can get that in. So most likely will be held to the October meeting at that point. But with that, we will open it up to public comment. And the first person we have signed in, if they would still like to speak, is Thomas Frank. Did you still want to speak on this item, Tom, or are you going to hold on it? So can you come up? Yep, you can come up to the microphone.
Thank you, board members. My name is Thomas Frank, and I'd like to comment on the bike path crossing at Auden Apartments, the pedestrian counts. That it is a part of the town of Amherst, New York Central Park. As far as the greenway, the statewide greenway, that the bike path is a part of this transportation network, which is a part of the New York State, statewide Greenway Parks, Trails, and Historic Preservation Program. And this is a part of the Amherst Central Park Plan, that the town school districts of Williamsville, Amherst, Sweet Home, they have athletic programs that include football, baseball, basketball, tennis, hockey, golf, but they don't have any bicycle programs, the most efficient means of transportation on the planet. And they, as far as the New York statewide Greenway Parks, Trails, and Historic Preservation, that this is a part of the system, that they're having the statewide summit meeting in September, and this is a part of what's going on with community development plan in the village of Williamsville. As far as the Ellicott Creek, the connection, as far as the connection to the Amherst State Park on Mill Street, and having to do with the reconstruction of the asbestos contaminated building that's been vacant for 20 years, to have it reconstructed as an environmental education center that's tied into the school districts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. With that, we also have Tim Desideri signed in for this item, if you'd like to speak.
Hi, my name is Tim Desiderio. I'm here on a separate issue. I sent an email to the board about an e-bike incident I was involved with on Maple Road. Didn't get a response. I believe that this is not the correct venue, but I'm going to air it anyway. It was in a minor accident where an e-bike struck a car I was in. The operator was not injured. However, when the police came, they did not take any information about the e-bike. It is a motorized vehicle. It was traveling, to my best guess, in excess of 24 miles an hour on a sidewalk in the opposite direction of traffic, and none of this was really notated by the police. I've also encountered e-bikes on the streets and on bike paths that are traveling in excess of 20 miles an hour, and my old school brain is not used to the distance they travel. And maybe the Traffic and Safety Board need to put something in place for the police to start investigating the e-bikes when they're involved in accidents, and community outreach about educating the community and the e-bike riders on how quick these can approach a vehicle when you're used to 12 miles an hour and they're traveling twice as fast. So if this is the right venue, I'd love to see you guys put this on your list.
Okay, thank you. Any other individuals wishing to speak on this agenda item this evening? Are you signed in for another item? Okay.
Just very briefly, because this fell within the range of what the first fellow was saying, I'd be very interested to know if you do.
What item are we on? Are we still on the bike path item?
Still on the bike path, yes.
Oh, sorry.
And you can use that photograph right there as the example. If it is true, what the first fellow was saying, that is part of the New York Greenway project, what the obligation is for safe bike signage crossing that street. I would appreciate if you could speak on that matter. Thank you.
Any other individuals wishing to speak on this item?
Sam Smith, as an avid biker myself, just thinking about design, there's the Rails to Trails in Buffalo where they have stop signage with the crosswalks for those areas. Also thinking about Buffalo where they have a bridge going over. It seems a bit too small to do a bridge, but just thinking of an alternative where the biker has the protection of the right of way. So thinking of existing structures that have succeeded in the Buffalo area with the biking path. That was all.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item this evening? None being heard, we'll close the public comment and just address the issues that we can on this item. Just for the residents that are in the audience this evening, when it comes to the e-bike enforcement of the police department, that particular item, you can continue to send a message to Chris. I'm not sure if that's something that would come before this board because it's not related to a specific street, specific area. It's more general area, and we would probably refer that over to Captain Pearsons as to guidance, ordinances, laws, everything else in regard to the e-bikes and what the enforcement is. I don't know if you want to add anything in at this point, but it is more on your, and then traffic safety, because it's not referred to a particular street, road section. It's general.
E-scooters and e-bikes, there's many different classes of them, and I'm really not prepared to talk about them right now. I will say that on the right side of this picture, that's just a sidewalk, so it's not really a bike path. The other side is a bike path, but you're talking about connecting the sidewalk to the bike path, so it's not one continuous path. But as far as e-bikes go, we have been looking into it. They're kind of a gray area. Electric scooters are a little bit more enforceable, but e-bikes, the law, I don't think, is caught up with what's actually happening out there. So we are aware of it, and we are working on it.
Okay, thank you. Regarding this particular incidents that Tom talked, this is not part of Amherst Central Park. Not prepared to talk on any of the items that Tom was talking about. This is actually up at North Forest and the bike path area tied to UB and the apartment building that you can see there in the distance. The reason why this particular item is on the agenda and was brought before us is that sidewalk and installation of the sidewalk there with the pedestrian crossing in that particular area was in order to provide pedestrian access to the apartment building as part of the site plan area. Since that has been done, it goes across the street to then access into the bike path to go towards UB. Based on information that's been brought before us and preliminary information that's been done, there's visibility problems in that area based on the curvature, the speed of the road, and other items. We referred that to the county for the county to review this item because we wanted to potentially have a crosswalk installed in that area, a rapid flash beacon, or something of that nature in order to improve the pedestrian access from that apartment building over to the county bike path. So that is what we are trying to do in this area. That was referred to the county. The county denied our request to do that because that is a county road in that particular area. So that is what we asked to have installed. That has not been approved or done by the county. That's what we're asking to be done. So they're now asking for the pedestrian counts in order to justify the installation of what is there. So that's what we're trying to get to. We're trying to improve that safety there. If not, we believe that we are providing access to something that is potentially an unsafe crossing area and would like to see that designated crosswalk area that was installed as part of the site plan removed, since we're guiding people basically to an unsafe area.
Chairman, I think you're completely accurate except for one addition. The county also said if you were to place an RRFB, you would need advanced ones given that curve. So not only just the one, but another one further down the road to warn those people traveling around the curve that there's a crossing occurring.
Okay, so that's really what we're looking at here is we're trying to improve that to get it to where it should be, but we need to prove that there are pedestrians that are actually using that area to warrant the installation of the signage. Yep, so we will continue to hold this particular agenda item pending those pedestrian counts, and we'll take what Scott just said as well into consideration from the bike path and the stop sign. Yeah.
Can you bring that back up at the time of review?
So with that, we will close the public comment. Your question, Tom?
As far as the connection to the GDNRTC, the Greater Buffalo Niagara Transportation Council, and the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Plan, that it's a part of an ongoing plan that the village is going through the planning process, but it also ties into your LWRP,
So-
local waterfront revitalization.
So with that, if you have other items to talk to regarding all of that, we would ask to send messages to Tom to get them to Chris to get them added to the agenda. So we're speaking specifically to this particular crosswalk for this particular agenda item. So with that, we're going to close agenda item number old business A on the agenda. And in order to keep moving along here, the next people signed in are for site plans, but before we move to those, we have to cover the old and new business sections first. The next item we have, Chris, with a resident in the audience is item number 2, Washington Highway for traffic safety concerns.
Sure, 9.
We already did, no, I'm sorry, you are correct. 9 is actually before 2. I looked at my second A here, not my first. Yep, 9 for Colonnine Avenue between Longmeadow and Fremont. And then we will go to 2.
Okay, so Caledine is item 9. They signed in first or before number 2. Location is between Longmeadow and Fremont. The resident that approached the town is asking for a parking restriction on the even side, also the west side of Caledine Avenue. The resident concerns brought forth is that parking on both sides is causing a traffic safety concern with the narrowing of the road down to a single lane. Location map, Caledine goes all the way from Main Street to Longmeadow, but the portion that is being discussed tonight is between Fremont and Longmeadow as shown in the dashed red lines. And again, just shown graphically, the request is for that parking restriction on the west side. To give a little background, there was some delay getting this before the Traffic Safety Board. So we took it upon ourselves at the engineering department to send letters to all adjacent residents who would be impacted by this proposal. We received 8 responses. 6 were in support and 2 were opposed. This is the card that was sent out. We gave them several weeks to respond, either by email or by dropping it off, essentially saying, do you support, yes or no? And we allowed them to provide additional comments. I think those comments are in your package. Anybody who provided comment, it's all written down. Graphically, those that are in green were in support. Those that are in red, oddly enough, are on the east side and they're more to the north. So graphically looking at this, there is some support on that west side, but a lot of yellow. Those yellow are the people who did not respond. When looking at the street itself, it's important to note that it is 28 feet wide. That is the current town standard for a roadway width. And in this particular picture, you do see quite a bit of parking on both sides. I thought it was important to provide some context of the entire Caledine stretch from Maine to Longmeadow. A little bit difficult to read, but going south to north, the kind of broke this up in boxes. Anything in blue is a street width of 26 feet wide. Those happen to also have a current parking restriction on the no parking allowed on the east side. So it's
No parking lot on the east side.
so yeah, you're right. Thanks. So I don't like the wording of that. So there would be a parking restriction on the east side in that section, and then the road widens to 28 feet wide. The area of interest tonight is highlighted in yellow, currently with parking allowed on both sides. With that, I'll turn it over to the board.
Thank you, Chris. We'll open it up to Nick for public comment period.
Hi, my name's Nick Schmidt. I live at 394 Caledine. I put in the original request with Chris. The big thing for our section of the street is everything on the west side is mainly single-family homes. So we all have driveways. We all park in our driveways. It's not as big of a deal on our side of the street. The other side of the street between Longmeadow and Fremont is mainly apartments, rentals, those kind of houses. So you have more vehicles on that side, and they tend to park on both sides of the street. So I know Chris showed that picture. It's usually pretty dicey to get down the street, especially at night, once everyone parks on the street. If you're going down and somebody's coming the other way, a lot of days both sides are full. So if you don't have a spot to pull off in, you're hoping the person on the other side sees you far enough down that they stop that you can get through, or you're pulling into a driveway. And you can't, it's just kind of a mess. The other thing is, my concern is with parking on this part on both sides. Before I moved to Amherst, I was a volunteer fireman in Cheektowaga for 17 years. So something like this where there's parking on both sides of the street would be my nightmare to try and get a fire truck down, just because of the narrowing. And, you know, if you're trying to get a 25-foot ladder truck down there, it's, you know, nearly impossible. You're having to make the swing or stop at the corner. So that's one of my concerns, is just safety. And like Chris showed in that other picture, the other 3 sections of Caledine down towards Main Street are all the same as our end is, where it's more apartments and rentals. And those 3 sections are limited to parking on one side. So it's not uncommon on the street to do that. That other part between Fremont and Oxford is mainly houses, so they have no parking restrictions there. So I don't think they have as much of a problem. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? None being heard, open it up to the board for further discussion. Based on the resident feedback that we've seen, I'm not in opposition to referring this to town board for installation of no parking as requested. However, I don't like the fact that we're going to leave one block without it. I would actually recommend that we hold the item and reach out to the residents in that one block that we're gonna not restrict and get feedback from there as well, and just extend the parking restriction all the way up to Long Meadow.
Yeah, I think it,
We're just gonna, if we restrict that one section, we're gonna push all those cars down to the next block.
and I think it should be consistent all the way down if you're gonna do it.
I agree.
Well, keep in mind, it's a east side to the south. He's requesting the west side, which is the residential side. So consistent how? That there's a parking restriction, or consistent that it's all on one side the entire way?
I would keep it consistent all the way, keep the parking restriction on the east side, up the whole street. I think the request is for the parking restriction on the west side, but for consistency of the street, we would extend it down the entire, actually, to be honest with you, I don't really, if we flipped it at the street there and put it on the other side, my concern is that we're gonna end up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks there with only one block not restricted.
Right.
And we know from other things that we've done, if you have a bunch of cars parked on the street, you take away their parking ability, those cars have to go someplace. So it's just gonna move the cars down to the next block. And after we put it in the next month, we're gonna have the residents from that block asking for it. So we might as well just do it now.
Looks like that next block south is all single family.
That is correct.
Chris, can we see the fire hydrants?
Yes.
And also, where are these people that can no longer park on the street going to park?
The next block. That's why
Well,
we
no,
want to.
well, that's the thing. I mean, if they can't move to the next block, if they can't park on their street.
East side.
So the fire hydrants are on the east side, which is why there's no parking on the east side probably.
Correct.
Probably.
So that's why you want to keep it on these.
Yep. If we do this, so if we do this and do it no parking on the east side, mostly because of the fire hydrants and consistency.
You gotta do-
Even though it's not the favored side, we gotta consider the fire hydrants. Volunteer firemen?
We're no longer looking at the right support map, because the way the wording was specific to the west side. So if you're really entertaining restricting the east side, we might have to do it again and extend it to the next block over.
What kind of turnover is there on those rentals? Is it families that rent for like 3, 4, 5, 6 years, or is it like?
So the parking restriction on the even side is the way that was worded, correct? Which would be on
Oh, yeah, it was.
even number side, which would be the prohibiting parking. It would flip it to the other side of the road. But because you have fire hydrants on the east side, you still have restrictions on the east side, further reducing parking ability around those fire hydrants.
We could word it, are you in support of a parking restriction, and then give them options, east side, west side, both sides?
But does it really change our mind?
Well, they'd be making their decision without considering the fire hydrants. So that's.
Gotta keep it consistent.
If we're talking about consistency in the town, the recommendation and what we normally do is we restrict the parking on the fire hydrant side of the road, which would be the why we're restricted on the east side on this particular street.
I don't want to give the options because we want the consistency, and I don't think that we have merit to take all the parking away because we still have a need for parking on the street. My recommendation is to set it back to the block that we already surveyed and the following block and get their feedback and come back.
Got it. And I can explain that upon review, hydrant side, et cetera, you know, I could give some context so they know why they're getting it again.
And we're making more responses from the first group.
I'm sorry, Kevin, the resident here, would you be in opposition of the east side restriction? Right.
Okay, so Chris will resurvey at this point and hold the item
Both
pending
blocks.
more comment and concern, more comment and feedback from the residents and the extension of the next block.
All right, yep. Expand the request.
Expand the request. So with that, we will hold this particular agenda item until we get that feedback, and we will close the item for tonight. And now with that, we will move to item number 2 on the agenda, which is Washington Highway. Thank you for bringing that to our attention. Yep.
Okay, item 2 is Washington Highway. This is for the entire corridor between Kensington and Main Street. Our request was for some general just roadway safety improvements. Resident pointed out frequent speeding. Drivers are not stopping at the stop signs at the intersection of Washington and Yorktown. There's unsafe conditions generally for pedestrians, especially children traveling to school. This is adjacent to the Amherst Middle School and the Amherst High School. When looking at it on the map, here it is shown in red, again, between Main and Kensington. And you have a lot of key intersections: Westmoreland, Kings, Saratoga, and Yorktown. Yorktown does terminate at a dead end at the Saratoga Park. This is specific to Yorktown and Washington. This is an all-way stop-controlled intersection. The residents' requests are specific to asking that the speed limit be lowered. Right now, it is currently at the town's lowest speed limit of 30 miles per hour. And it's asking for the installation of a center median at the intersection, adding speed humps as used in Buffalo. We looked at the crash data for the last 3 years. There were a total of 11 crashes reported. They're shown graphically as dots on the screen: 2 failure to yield at intersections, 2 crashes with parked cars, 3 crashes related to confusion on who had the right-of-way within an intersection, 1 backed out of driveway, 2 lane departures, and 1 stolen car-related damage. Of those 11, 2 had high school students involved. When you look at signage in the area, much like a lot of other areas in Eggertsville and Snyder, these are full all-way stopped controlled intersections. We did have the ability to do counts prior to the meeting. Those were shared with you in the package. Briefly looking at this, we have an 85th percentile speed of 25 miles per hour with a total number of vehicles traveling at just shy of 700 vehicles per day. In the opposite direction, southbound, it's 26 miles per hour. So in the southbound direction, you're really only having 12 vehicles a day, at least this one's selected, traveling over the speed limit. Northbound, you only have 9. There's 1 vehicle over 40. Stop sign compliance, we were able to go out yesterday just for an hour, midday, and we went specifically to Yorktown and Washington. There were 6 complete blow-throughs on Washington, 11 roll-throughs, and 8 that completely stopped. So this does back up what the resident was saying about stop sign compliance. Keep in mind, there's very little traffic coming off of Yorktown. And that concludes what I have to show to you.
Thank you, Chris. With that, we'll open it up to Elia.
Thanks for hearing me, and it's late, so I appreciate your time. I saw that data, and it was really fascinating data to see. I'm at the early stages of investigating why road speed safety is a thing on the street. The fact that I'm going to be quick, right? There's 3 minutes, and my request is a bit different than other members this evening of the public because I don't have a specific request that I'm coming at you with right now, but rather I'm at the early phases of investigating how to increase safety on this block where I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. That entire corner of Washington Highway and Yorktown has literally at that corner, there are 5 families with children. There is an elderly couple right at the corner there. That is a park, as it has been demonstrated. So there's frequent dog and pedestrians passing into the park. But also further up Washington, there are the middle school and the high school. And what wasn't mentioned at the end of Washington Highway is Amherst Community Center Church Child Care Center, A5C, which is at the church adjacent to the high school. So the entire area has significant amount of pedestrian, children, public, and the road is not wide enough for 2 cars to pass if there are people parked on both sides. Since the previous issue mentioned the width of the road, I was curious if, Chris, you had the data about the width of the road as well. During the winter, during the night, you were not allowed to park on the street, citywide, I presume. However, it was fascinating to see that data about the speed because it demonstrated to me that the perception of speed from people who live on the street is that safe speeds are much slower than what it appears. I did not know that 30 miles per hour was the lowest speed limit until you just said that about the city. And that plus the stopping at the stop sign seem to be the primary issues. I find it remarkable that the speed limit on the street is 30 miles per hour. I don't understand how it could possibly be that fast. The fact that people are driving generally between the 21 and 25 mile per hour range would suggest to me that that's actually the safest range to be driving at. Otherwise, you would see much higher numbers in that respect. You literally can't drive much faster without it being dangerous if there are 2 cars on the side of the road. And there are people walking. Yes, and in my email letter that I wrote to the city who suggested to me to come to this meeting as a means of a first step, one of the things that I said why I suggested the median is because I very much believe that infrastructure dictates the rate at which cars go more so than signage. That being said, it seems very clear to me that if there were actually crosswalks at the intersection, or a sign that says approaching a school district or park or anything at all, as you saw from the, as you can see right now, there are no crosswalks. There are some crosswalks further up on Washington Highway by the school. That's an interesting one because there's not a crosswalk on the other side. The left side of that sidewalk, the sidewalk doesn't actually continue at that. If you're going on Saratoga to the left right there, there is no sidewalk where that tree is. So the sidewalk, there's no, where the crosswalk is, there's not a continuing sidewalk from, the tree is blocking. That whole area is under construction at the moment, and maybe there'll be a sidewalk after that construction is done. I'm not sure. Suffice it to say, I'm trying to demonstrate that there are numerous steps that could be taken to create effective calm traffic. And in my letter, I was proposing some of the options. Based on this meeting, I'm understanding what some of those limitations are. That was actually something I was looking to learn about this evening, is what those limitations might be and who the constituents and stakeholders are to affect change.
Okay.
So continuing conversation, but I'd be curious to hear what your responses are. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item this evening? None being heard or seen, we will close the public comment and open up to the board here for discussion.
So the resident did provide some photos that I'm showing you now of some options, and these should be familiar with a lot of the board members. These are chicanes. A mini roundabout is also shown. These are some of the solutions he provided through email just prior to this meeting, but just wanted to throw that out there. Again, normally these things are implemented when you have a speeding issue, demonstrated within the data, which we don't have. I understand that the doctor thinks that the current speeds are high for that area and that the speed limit should be lowered, and it could be lowered even more with some traffic control devices. But general rule of thumb is you start implementing those countermeasures when there is a problem, not when there's an 85th percentile speed well below the posted speed limit.
And you yourself observed one of the things that we recommend is parking cars on the street to make it difficult for people to speed, and effectively the parked cars become the chicanes. So that's already happening. As you can see, the cars are going 25 miles an hour tops, about 85% of them anyway. So that's one of the things that we recommend, and it's already happening.
With that as well, the town law is that the speed limit in the town is 30 miles per hour, right? So in order for the town to have a speed limit posted anywhere in the town, there would need to be a local ordinance, local law passed by the town board, which actually, with changes in New York state law, would now be allowed. However, the town board would need to take that action to allow a speed limit to be posted in the town lower than 30 miles per hour. You are correct in the information that you gave with the 85th percentile speed. That is what we would look at. Even though the speed is below the 30 mile per hour speed limit, we can't post below the 30 mile per hour speed limit. So that's just the town-wide speed limit. When it comes to the traffic calming devices and suggestions that you would make, as Chris said, those are items that we would put in place where we had high speed issues in order to get the speeds to where they are on your particular street. So from the perspective of this board, your street is actually where we would like to see all the streets. So to see those numbers, it's actually a good thing. Cars are parked on the street. It is where it is. When it comes to stop sign compliance that is there, as we said at the beginning of the meeting, stop signs are traffic control devices, not speed control devices. And what you end up having when you put in unwarranted stop signs is lack of compliance with those stop signs. So what this really tells us a lot of what's going on in the street is that those always stop signs were put in when the neighborhood was built many years ago, or in response to resident complaints, whatever the case may be, to warrant putting those in as always stop signs. But as soon as you put the always stop signs in, what you end up with is lack of compliance to those stop signs, people rolling through the stop signs, large number of people driving through that area, being the schools, being a high traffic area, being the residents of the streets. They are familiar with those streets. They're driving through them on a regular basis. They know as they come up to those stop signs and they go to Kings Highway, they go to Saratoga, they go to Yorktown, there's not cross traffic coming there, so they just simply roll through those stop signs because they're not warranted at the end of the day. So
I would contest it. I would say Harlem Road is better because it doesn't have stop signs.
So it's it's still a,
It is, I would suspect of those 35 people that went through the stop signs, what was it, 11? There was 11 who rolled through and 6 who blew. I'd say all 17 of those people live in that neighborhood. And the only ones who stopped were people who were unfamiliar with the neighborhood on some errand through there. This neighborhood was designed, what, 80 years ago? When you just put four-way stops in without thinking about it. Since then, there's been unbelievable advances in traffic study, how to make traffic flow smarter. And if this neighborhood was built today, it would be signed completely different. So what we're dealing with is an artifact from old engineering that's not going to change. Because if you start talking about taking away those stop signs, it's not going to happen.
we can tell you right now that we would make recommendations in this area based on that stop sign compliance to remove those stop signs. That would take local law to go before the town board. Guarantee you that if we were to do that, residents on your street, you included, would be before the town board for public comment, stating that you don't want those stop signs removed. Town board would comply with the request of the residents. That's the way it works anytime we try to remove a stop sign. Right, so the only way you fix the problems with this non-compliance with stop signs is to remove the unwarranted stop signs. That's the solution to fix that. Or we can put a police officer at every single stop sign in the town to enforce compliance, which we're not going to do that either. So we can refer this to the police department for additional enforcement on Washington Highway for stop sign compliance. They'll go out there. Obviously, they have the numbers here. They can write probably 10 tickets every day if they wanted to, 17 tickets. Police will go away. Next day, the stop sign compliance will go through. We'll continue. We can also go into this area if we wanted to continue to study it, look at that street. We can do cut through traffic studies where the town will put one of the people from the engineering department, an intern or an employee. They will put them on both ends of the street, and they will do what is called the license plate study to measure the traffic that cuts through, which would be a car that starts at one end, exits at the other end without making a stop in between, right? So we can do that study to justify that. I don't know what it's really going to tell us other than, is it a cut through street or is it a not cut through street? Is it going to change what's going to happen there? It's probably not going to change. When it comes to anything that this board is going to recommend or anything that would be looked at this particular street, it's going to go before the town board. That graph, if you go back one more from there, Chris, if you look at that one, that's going to be looked at by the town board as a 26 mile per hour, 85th percentile speed under the town speed limit. The street at this point is not a concern. We have other streets where we have similar problems on the street and we have speeds in excess of 45 miles per hour. Those are the streets that we're going to consider adding it and putting in a speed hump, installing roundabouts or taking some kind of traffic measure calming. This street is telling us that the speed is moving under the posted speed limit, and unfortunately, it's a good street from the standpoint of what we're seeing on the speed from the study that was done.
Given the information, are you saying that you wouldn't advocate for, say, crosswalk being put in?
So the crosswalks that have been installed in that neighborhood are in there because of the schools that are in that area and counts that have been done at those intersections to justify the crosswalks that are going there from the pedestrian counts based on the information that we have. Right, so those other intersections that you're looking at installing them or asking for them to be put in, they're outside of the school zone. That would be every single street in the town that we could put the painting on the street. Which ones do you put them on? Which ones do you not put them on? Are we going to put them on Washington Highway? Are we going to then put them on every other street in the town where there's crosswalks that are there? So this matches the consistency that we have within the town of where those crosswalks are installed. They're installed within the school zones, where the pedestrians and where the kids are crossing and the paths that they are following based on all the requests that we've received from the school district, from the parents in that area, from the kids that are walking to there, that's where they're crossing. We've studied the neighborhood multiple times in that area based on every request we've had to figure out where we should put them and why they're there. They're within the school zone for the pedestrian crossing for those students. When you exit the school zone, it follows the guidelines and standards that we have in the remainder of the town with painting the crosswalks onto the street in a residential street. I, I would, I would say that right now, the data is telling us there's not a safety issue on the street.
The lived experience of being there. How can I, what steps can I take at that? Or to demonstrate that the lived experience would demonstrate their steps that they can take.
I would suggest, I don't think you can change the data, but what you could do is continue to have cars parked on the street as indicated that in what you talked about, that is what slows down traffic. You could independently place markers on your corners where you have families that say, you know, slow children at play, something like that. Again, to remind anybody who's going through the neighborhood that there are children outside and people walking. But there's nothing else that I think we can do as a committee to change the data or the outcomes.
And unfortunately, when it comes to this particular agenda item, we have multiple streets that exist within the town where we do have excessive speeds, and we have residents that come before the board asking for the same questions. So I think you hit it correctly when it comes to resources in the town, looking for the consistency in the town. We could go down every single street, ask every single resident, and probably 80% of those residents would say the same thing as you're saying right now about your street, that cars are too fast, people aren't stopping at stop signs. Unfortunately, it's the reality of what we live in today, and we're not going to be able to address it on a street-by-street basis. We're looking at this at a macro level of the best overall consistency for standards throughout the town. Right, so we can continue, like Kara said, continue to document things that you're seeing, take actions on your own behalf, but from the town's perspective, from my perspective on this board, unless anybody else wants to jump in and say something differently, there isn't anything that this board, based on the information that we have at this time, would do differently on your street, other than make a recommendation to remove unwarranted stop signs, which is not the recommendation that anybody on the street is going to want to follow, because right now, that's what the data tells us. Remove the unwarranted stop signs.
I'd like to make a motion to receive and file this item.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0. So with that, we will close the agenda item, and feel free if you have other concerns on it or other ideas. You have Chris's information from the communication to send him more information. Yep, thank you.
You may want to stick around for a while till we get to item 6.
Item 6.
So with that, we have no other items on the agenda where we have people signed in. So with that, just based on the resident that's here in the audience and where we stand on the agenda tonight, we have 3 items. We'll move to item number 6, Chris. Let's move to Imperial Highway and Huntley Circle.
All right, to present this item is a engineering intern, Frank Fontana.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Frank Fontana. I work as an intern at the Town of Amherst Engineering Department. I'm excited to present this to you today. What I'm presenting is item 6. Imperial and Huntley is on the intersection of Imperial Drive and Huntley Circle. The residents' request was traffic control signage, and their concerns included close calls for vehicular incidents, lack of any traffic control, and tricky geometry. Now, we reviewed this In 2015, 2016, on November 4th, a request was received for a traffic control device. Item is held pending on a vehicular count. And in January 13th, 2016, about a couple months after turning movement counts were performed, number of vehicles recorded was low. ATSB recommended no change based on the low numbers of vehicles counted. Here's a location aerial. Imperial comes off of Hartford Road there, as you can see on the bottom of the screen. There is strange geometry at the intersection. Looks like a triangle, right? 90-degree triangle. We do not know why it's constructed that way. Imperial is the major road. Huntley is the minor. As you can tell in the photo, there's no stop or yield sign present. While it's uncommon in Amherst, it is acceptable in the MUTCD. We took some traffic counts last month. On the right is the turning diagram with the data collected during the times of 9:35 a.m. to 10:35 a.m. And then the PM count, or the afternoon count, being 2:30 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Keep in mind there's some low volume on those counts, and Imperial does hold more traffic than Huntley does. Crashes, so no reported crashes in the last 5 years on the New York State Clear System. And just a quick reminder, this is the current intersection. So I looked into like a short-term solution. The resident requested an implemented stop sign at the intersection going westbound on Huntley. A potential short-term suggestion shown on the image is to paint lines to direct drivers to turn at a more proper angle. As you can see, that little dash section there. And as well as the requested stop sign and stop bar placed on Huntley there. Long-term concept, we also suggested that it would be an interest to potentially remove the extra paved area to create a more formal T-shaped intersection. This would require more complex design construction of paving, curbing, landscaping, and the restructure of the surrounding sidewalk and driveways. This concept would be way more involved, unfortunately, and have to be programmed by the highway department. This concludes our presentation. I pass it to the board for review. Thank you.
Okay.
Job,
Thank
Frank.
you.
Thank you.
So with that, I will open it up to public comment. We said we have nobody signed in for this item, so we'll still have people in the crowd, anyone wishing to speak. None being heard, we will close the public comment and open it up to the board.
What happens if we put here comes Sam, here comes Sam.
We've got a couple more items.
So funny enough, I actually used to live at that corner. So I'm very intimately aware with that. One thing I wanted to point out is when I lived there, I didn't really think it was a traffic issue. I haven't lived there in God knows how many years. But one thing I did notice that can actually be applicable for Washington Highway as well is one safety measure that's never mentioned is plant more trees, because if you plant more trees, you cause more visual obstruction. So that is potentially an option. You can also, in addition to the striping, you can set up cones theoretically, which is also cheaper than the striping, and see if that's applicable. But yeah, I used to live there. I didn't feel like it was an issue. But without the lack of trees, you would drive down the middle of the road because there's no actual line delineation, and that's applicable for any road in Amherst because there are no dividing lines. They function like highways. So that's the only thing I had to say about that.
So Sam,
Yeah.
the data doesn't show any issues with the crash history.
And that's
and
when I
you're
lived there.
saying there's no issue.
When I lived there many, many years ago.
Why
Yeah.
do you think this works as it's currently configured and without any signage? Do you know why?
Do I know why it works?
Yeah.
I do. Oh, are you going to give me a lesson? I'm gonna
No,
say- Oh.
no. I'm curious what your
Just
opinion is.
Your opinion. Why you think it works.
I think it's just because of the maturity, like the type of neighborhood it was. I don't know if it had to do with the houses are more farther apart, you know, just like everyone's traffic patterns. When I lived there, there was what, 4 or 5 cars in the driveway. I actually lived in the one, not the brown house right by the proposed stop sign, but the one right next to it. I just remember it not being an issue, and there was really never any cars parked on the side on the roads. It actually like defies all rules of the road, and it is a cut-through street. It 100% is a cut-through street when I lived there. But
Imperial?
I lived on Imperial, yeah. Like right at that corner where that was, yeah. So I lived there in college, where we all drive stupidly in college. Yeah, so like there's no it's just, I think it's because the Huntley Circle, there's not a lot of traffic coming out of Huntley Circle, and that's probably why it's not as much of an issue.
Okay.
But
Thank
yeah,
you.
but
Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? None being heard or seen. Now we will close the public comment period. I will just add that I live in a neighborhood myself that has a weird configured intersection with the way roads come together, and there are no traffic stop signs in that intersection. And I would say in my neighborhood where that exists, it's probably the safest intersection in the neighborhood because of the fact that there are no stop signs. Everybody slows down because nobody knows what anybody's going to do. So it's actually referenced in areas where there are very low traffic counts that you do not have the traffic signs and the stop signs. They're not necessary to place them. You can leave it unsigned, as in this particular instance, and I would argue that the residents that are using Huntley and people that are there on Imperial, there is not an accident history there because they're familiar with the lack of the signs that are there. They know there's confusion, so everybody slows down because you don't know what the other car is going to do. So you slow down to make sure it's good. You continue to roll through, but it slows people down. That's just my personal opinion, not fact. But I would actually, and my recommendation in many places is the town of Amherst should have more intersections like this without stop signs, because people slow down when there's no stop signs because of the confusion that is caused in a residential neighborhood where you have the same people driving the roads all the time.
There's a, how to say this? The intersection is such that there's tremendous line of sight in all directions also.
It's a sea of asphalt.
It's a sea, you can see what's coming. You can see what's coming. However, what's coming on Imperial does seem to go pretty fast. We sat there for a few minutes and watched cars going back. What does come through Imperial is going fast, but you can see it coming. I don't.
I'd like to make a motion to receive and file.
Seconded.
One other thing to consider is a possible roundabout.
Was there a second on that?
Yeah, I seconded.
We had a motion to receive and file from Kara. We had a second from, who seconded that?
Nick did.
Nick did. A second from Nick. Now we can have further discussion.
Just, this is a possible candidate for a traffic circle, except there's just not much traffic. I mean, there's 2 cars coming out of Huntley. I mean, no accident history. A traffic circle would look nice there, though, that's the thing.
Plenty of room.
You can.
I would say if there was more hazard, more danger, I would go for it, but yeah, receive and file.
I would say based on no accident history in the last 5 years, and it's existed as long as it has without any traffic control device, I would continue to leave as is and also be in favor of receive and file. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0 to receive and file and leave as is following what was done in 2016. Thanks, Frank, for presenting that to us. All right, so we will now move back to item number 3 on the agenda, which is Tonawanda Creek Road, which is related to speeding concerns on Tonawanda Creek.
All right, we're Tonawanda Creek Road. As most of us know, that goes all the way from one side of the town to the other side of the town, east to west. This section that's brought before our attention is specific to New Road to Transit, as shown on the screen in red. The request is to lower the speed limit. Well, I kind of breeze through this here. The resident is saying there's excessive speeds. It is currently signed at 50 miles per hour, although speeds that he witnesses are exceeding 60 miles per hour, particularly in the westbound direction. He's saying that the adjacent or nearby other streets in the area are signed lower. Transit Road 45, New Road 40. There's geometry challenges. The road has multiple blind curves, according to the resident. Some of the straighter sections encourage speeding, several blind spots, particularly out of driveways. There is some recreational and residential environments specific to the Empire State Trail, and there's popular ice cream shop on Transit to the east. There are no sidewalks or bike paths, forcing pedestrians and cyclists to share the roadway. He has some difficulty pulling out of a driveway, frequent wildlife crossings. Essentially, the request is to drop it from 50 to 40, similar to New Road, also to increase targeted speed enforcement, address the vegetation. So we decided to put together a map of the area speed limits. The area that we're talking about is right here at 50. Millersport's 55, Transit's 45. The other side of Tonawanda Creek, across the creek in Pendleton, is 45. And I will note that Tonawanda Creek is consistent with 50 until you reach Hopkins Road, and then it drops to 45. So as we normally do when we're looking at speed limits, we collect traffic speeds and we look at the 85th percentile speed. We did like right where the guy lives, which is a straighter section right in the middle. In the westbound direction, it was 52 miles per hour. In the eastbound direction, it was 48 miles per hour. Again, the posted is 50. This was collected in the last week of July. Traffic volume, it's surprisingly low. We see residential streets that have much higher vehicular volume than this one. This only has close to 1,200 vehicles per day. Here's a range of the volume, peaks in the AM peak, and then a little bit at 4 p.m. Over a 3-year period, there were only 2 crashes on record. One was deer-related, and one was a lane departure collision with a snowbank, likely having to do with condition of the roadway during a snowstorm. In reviewing the history of this, you guys looked at this in 2022. You guys asked Erie County if they would support a speed limit. At that time, they did not. Keep in mind, this is an Erie County highway. In 2023, the members agreed unanimously to receive and file the item to lower that speed limit. Now, what's changed since those past reviews is the change in the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. The 11th edition came out, and in 2023, the newest edition de-emphasized the use of that 85th percentile speed as the sole basis for setting speed limits. For those members who've been on the board for a long time, you remember the town saying, the book tells you to post the speed limit within 5 miles per hour of the 85th percentile speed. That is no longer the case. Now agencies must consider the roadway environment, the land use, roadway characteristics. We're talking about the geometry, sight distance, whether or not it has shoulders, the alignment, etc., whether or not this has bike and pedestrian activity, the crash history, and speed distribution and context of development. Speed distribution is, whether or not there is consistency. Is there a speed graph that, has that curve that you're used to, or is there just mass confusion of what people are driving? I don't have the graph in here, but I can pull it up though. I think that's important to look at. So, if you didn't see this curve and you saw a high number traveling 41 to 45 and a high number, a similar number, 36 to 40, that is inconsistent speeds. This is what you normally see, that curve, bell curve. And I think that's it.
So all that may have changed, but the fact is people are still driving between 48 and 52, which is the speed they're comfortable at. We give it to the county. The county's going to say no change.
Just because you post a sign at a lower speed limit doesn't mean they're going to drive any slower.
They're going to drive. How many times have we said it? They're going to drive at the speed they're comfortable driving at? And people are comfortable driving between 48 and 52, which is posted 50. The county's going to say it's posted right where it should be.
I'm going to make a motion to receive and file based on prior history, lack of changes in anything in the area since it was last reviewed, the average traffic speeds that people are currently driving, and lack of crash history. I mean, it's where it should be.
I second that.
Any further conversation? None being heard, we will receive and file item number 3 again. With that, we have item number 7 for Charlotte Delta Road intersection, a request for cross traffic does not stop sub-black, our new favorite sign.
All right, this one should move fairly quick too. We're at the intersection of Charlotte and Delta. Resident wants a cross traffic does not stop sub-black. Reason is that drivers are failing to yield the right of way and leading to many close calls. This is an image and an overview of where we are. We're south of Eggert. In between Eggert and Longmeadow, there's an intersection of Charlotte and Delta. Currently, Delta is stopped with stop control. And we did not do counts here, so I hear Scott saying whether or not those stop signs are placed in the right locations. We don't know because we didn't do traffic counts. But perhaps that's adding to some confusion because this is the current, the way it's signed. Again, Delta is stopped. There have been no crashes at this intersection the past 3 years. And this is what the resident is asking. Cross traffic does not stop. When you look in the book, you place these with a combination of a stop sign and engineering judgment that indicates that conditions are present that are causing or could cause road users to misinterpret the intersection as an always stop. Our highway department will tell you that just the fact that it doesn't say all way underneath that stop sign, drivers should be aware that it is not an always stop. We do place always underneath every always stop in the town. When it doesn't have it, you should assume that there is the opposing traffic is not stopping. With that, I'll pass it over to you guys.
So I'd be curious how many people actually drive Charlotte in a day.
I'm just going to say I don't think it matters because the ultimate issue at this intersection is the intersection is stop controlled the wrong way on the minor major leg. Delta, just if you look at the map, Delta's by far. I mean, Delta is going to be the main, Charlotte's going to be the minor. So the stop signs should be the other way. That's what's causing the problem. And a close call. We have no accident history. A close call isn't an accident. People made the right move. And we should save these signs for their use where we have accident history and issues. So I would move to receive and file.
A second.
Motion by me, second by Cynthia. Further conversation? None being heard, all in favor? Motion carried 6-0 to receive and file. With that, any other new business to bring before the board? None being heard, we'll close the new business section. Open up, go to the old business section. We've already covered the old business. Any old business that wishes to be discussed? I'm just gonna bring up one issue under old business just for the fun of it. I know it's in the count, in the village, but it's still, the village is within the town. When we look right outside here in the town, the crossing beacon, I was driving here this evening. How long is the new sign? How long is the DOT gonna keep the new sign on all of the signage on Main Street for the pet head that was installed?
Per the book, the new traffic control device subplaque should only be up for 6 months.
So would it be for us to send that to New York State DOT or the village to send that to DOT to ask them to remove those since they've been there since 4 years now, 5 years now? Is that us or is that, should that be referred to the village? Will the village do anything? Dan, your village too.
Can you send one letter with both people signing, both agencies?
That's my only thing. We don't need to discuss it any further. I'll just leave it there as a note of,
Should technically come from the village.
so I'll refer it to Dan. So.
When does new stop being new? Is that
When
what
does
you're
stop-
asking?
I'm asking when new stops being new. So with that, any other old business? None being heard, we'll close the old business. We will thank Councilmember Zucala and our liaisons that are with us this evening, except for Scott, who gets to remain with us. We'll thank him later, and we will move on to the site plans.
So we have public here for Chateau. Chairman?
Say that
Chairman.
again, Chateau?
Yeah, how do you want to?
Yep, we'll see you. Thank you, guys. Do we?
Chateau on the town's website.
I thought we were doing Dodge.
No, the residents here for Chateau. So just for the residents here, all the residents here, you're here for Chateau, correct? You're all here for that? We're just trying to find the plans for the screens to figure out how to review this with you.
So are they here for site planning thing? Oh, okay. What's that? I think we probably talked about this recently, right?
I'll be back.
Thank you.
Stepping out.
You're the first intern to do that, Frank, so.
That's great. That's great.
We're gonna run for some more fun. I gotta stick around for, what is it? What is the Chris Dot Road? It's Park Dodge. We'll do that next. I can't.
As far as since they're already set up at the table. We just got, I think.
Yeah, we do have.
716-276-3595. Working on this. It's tied into.
All right, remember, you can do that. We're gonna do this first one at the table.
So who's the tenant? What's the scuttlebutt?
I don't know.
That's the standard answer around.
Can you, start with that one? Clear out the room?
Turn off.
Just make some room and keep going here. Carry that application. No, it's actually bigger.